Have you ever been in a relationship where nothing clearly went wrong, but something still changed? She still talks to you. She still replies. There's no argument, no betrayal, no dramatic moment you can point to. But the energy feels different. The warmth is slightly reduced. The conversations feel shorter. The connection that once felt natural now feels managed. And what makes it more frustrating is this. You can't point to a single moment where everything shifted. Because in most cases, it doesn't happen all at once. It happens quietly, through small interactions, subtle adjustments, moments that don't seem important at the time, but slowly reshape the dynamic. And by the time you fully notice it, the relationship already feels different. Today, we're not going to look at this from a place of blame. We're not going to reduce it to men versus women. Instead, we're going to break this down as a psychological pattern. How emotional distance actually develops. How respect subtly shifts over time. And why early relationship dynamics often determine everything that follows. Because once you understand the pattern, you stop reacting emotionally to what's happening, and you start recognizing it early enough to stay grounded. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Most people think relationships end because of big moments. Arguments, betrayal, major disagreements, a single breaking point. But more often, relationships don't break. They drift. And that drift usually starts long before either person becomes aware of it. At the beginning, things feel effortless. There's curiosity. There's engagement. There's a natural balance of energy. You're both showing up with genuine interest and openness. But over time, something subtle begins to shift. One person gives slightly more. The other adjusts slightly less. No one plans it. No one decides it. But the dynamic starts evolving based on what's repeated. And this is where most people misunderstand what's happening. They think, she changed. The energy just faded. Something must be wrong with me. But in reality, the dynamic adapted, based on patterns that were never consciously defined. Psychologically, this drift is rooted in something researchers call reciprocity norms. In the early stages of any relationship, both people are unconsciously tracking who initiates, who responds, who invests emotional energy, and who receives it. When those exchanges become imbalanced, even slightly, the brain begins to adjust expectations. One person starts to feel more responsible for maintaining the connection, while the other begins to experience the relationship as something that just happens. This isn't dramatic. It's incremental. A slightly longer reply time here. A canceled plan there. A moment of support that goes unreciprocated. Over weeks and months, these small adjustments compound into a noticeable emotional distance. The key insight is that this drift is not inevitable failure. It is a predictable outcome of early, unspoken patterns. Understanding it gives us the power to notice it sooner and respond with awareness rather than confusion or self-doubt. Let's make this more real. Imagine two people. Let's call them Daniel and Maya. They meet through mutual friends at a casual gathering. Daniel is 34, works in project management for a logistics company, and values structure and consistency in his life. Maya is 29, a freelance marketing consultant who recently moved to the city for better opportunities. The connection feels easy from the start. Shared humor, similar interests in hiking and live music, and no immediate pressure. In the first few weeks, the energy is balanced. They text regularly, but not constantly. They make plans that feel mutual. Both seem engaged and present. Daniel appreciates Maya's warmth and expressiveness. Maya enjoys Daniel's calm, thoughtful nature. But over time, small things begin to change. Daniel starts replying faster to her messages. He becomes more available on weekends. He adjusts his schedule more easily when she suggests last-minute plans. Not dramatically, just slightly. Maya doesn't consciously decide to change anything, but she begins responding differently. Her replies take a little longer. Her effort becomes less consistent. Her attention becomes less predictable, sometimes warm and engaged, other times polite but brief. At first, Daniel doesn't react. He assumes she's busy with work deadlines or adjusting to her new environment. So he compensates. He reaches out more. He puts in more effort to keep the connection alive. He suggests plans, follows up, and tries to maintain the momentum they once shared naturally. And this is where the shift begins. Neither of them is doing anything wrong. Daniel is acting from a place of care and investment. Maya is navigating her own life stresses and responding in the way that feels natural to her in the moment. Yet the pattern is forming. Daniel is becoming the primary maintainer of the emotional connection, while Maya is becoming the responder. This case study isn't about labeling one person as the problem. It's about showing how ordinary, well-intentioned behaviors can quietly create an imbalance that feels confusing to both people later on. What most people don't realize is this. Every relationship forms an invisible structure early on, not through words, but through behavior. Who initiates? Who adjusts? Who gives more? Who sets the pace? These patterns don't feel significant in the moment, but they become the default operating system of the relationship. In Daniel and Maya's case, Daniel becomes the one who maintains momentum. Maya becomes the one who responds to it. Neither of them planned this. But once the pattern repeats a few times, it stabilizes. And once it stabilizes, it becomes difficult to change without deliberate awareness and conversation. Psychologists call this the invisible frame because it operates below conscious awareness. It is shaped by attachment styles, past relationship experiences, and the natural human tendency to seek comfort and predictability. When one person consistently steps into the role of initiator or supporter, the other person's brain begins to associate the relationship with ease rather than mutual effort. Over time, ease can quietly replace excitement. This frame is not inherently bad. Every relationship develops some structure. The issue arises when the structure becomes one-sided without either person noticing or discussing it. The result is a slow erosion of emotional safety, the very foundation that allows respect, attraction, and connection to thrive. This is where psychology becomes important. Because attraction isn't just about how someone treats you. It's about how they position themselves in their own life. When someone appears grounded, consistent, and structured, they are perceived as stable. And stability creates respect. But when someone begins adjusting too easily, especially early on, it creates a subtle shift in perception. Not consciously, but psychologically. The question becomes, is this person grounded? Or are they adapting around me? And that question quietly changes everything. From a behavioral psychology perspective, this shift is tied to something called interdependence theory. When one partner consistently accommodates the other's schedule, emotional needs, or preferences without clear reciprocity, the dynamic moves from mutual interdependence to a more one-sided reliance. The person who is doing most of the adjusting may feel they are being caring, but the other person may begin to experience them as less independent, less mysterious, and therefore less compelling over time. Respect and attraction are deeply linked to perceived autonomy. When someone seems to have their own life, direction, and boundaries, it signals emotional maturity and self-worth. When those boundaries become flexible or disappear early on, the perception of value can quietly diminish, not because the person is less worthy, but because the dynamic has changed the way they are experienced. There's another layer most people overlook. Attraction doesn't grow from constant presence. It grows from space. Space creates curiosity, anticipation, emotional movement. When someone becomes too available too quickly, that space disappears. And when space disappears, connection can flatten. Not because interest is gone, but because there's no room for it to expand. In Daniel and Maya's story, this played out in small but meaningful ways. Daniel's increased availability meant Maya never had to wonder or reach out first. The natural tension that comes from not knowing exactly when or how the other person will respond was replaced by predictability. Over time, that predictability reduced the emotional charge that once made their interactions feel alive. Research on romantic attraction consistently shows that intermittent reinforcement, moments of connection mixed with natural space, strengthens emotional bonds far more than constant contact. When space is protected, both people have room to miss each other, to anticipate seeing one another, and to bring their best energy to the relationship. When space is filled too early or too completely, the relationship can start to feel more like a comfortable routine than a dynamic connection. Human behavior adapts, not always consciously, but consistently. People adjust based on what is allowed, what is repeated, what is reinforced. So when boundaries are unclear, the dynamic doesn't stay neutral. It evolves, and often, it evolves toward imbalance. In Daniel and Maya's case, each small adjustment reinforced the next. Daniel's willingness to initiate and accommodate made it easier for Maya to respond less. Maya's reduced effort made Daniel feel he needed to do more to keep things going. This created a feedback loop that neither of them intended, yet both participated in through small, everyday choices. This reinforcement process is why the drift feels so invisible. It doesn't happen through big decisions. It happens through hundreds of micro moments where one person gives a little more and the other gives a little less, until the pattern becomes the new normal. Instead of thinking in terms of rules, it's more useful to think in terms of structure. Structure doesn't control people. It stabilizes dynamics. Here are 5 key structures that help prevent the silent shift from taking hold. 1. Clarity of personal boundaries. Early connection should build through shared experience, not evaluation. When too much personal or financial detail is introduced too early, the interaction can shift from emotional connection to assessment. Pacing matters, not hiding, but unfolding naturally over time. This creates space for genuine curiosity rather than premature judgment. 2. Addressing small moments early. Disrespect rarely begins loudly. It shows up in small moments. Tone, jokes, subtle dismissiveness. Ignoring these moments doesn't maintain peace. It sets precedent. Calm acknowledgement, not reaction, is what preserves respect. A simple, grounded response in the moment can reset the dynamic without drama or escalation. 3. Protecting your time. Your time reflects your structure. When your schedule becomes completely flexible, your identity becomes flexible too. But when your time is intentional, your life communicates direction, and people naturally respond to that. Protecting your own commitments and rhythm creates healthy anticipation rather than constant availability. 4. Emotional pacing. Connection deepens through mutual investment, not through one-sided emotional availability. You can be present without becoming responsible for someone else's emotional state. That balance preserves both connection and independence. It allows space for both people to bring their full selves without one person carrying the emotional load alone. 5. Responding to distance. Distance happens in every relationship. The difference is how you respond. Most people increase effort, but often, that creates more imbalance. Sometimes, the most grounded response is observation, not withdrawal, but space. Space allows clarity. It gives both people the opportunity to recalibrate and choose to show up more fully. These 5 structures are not about control or manipulation. They are about creating a relationship environment where mutual respect and emotional safety can naturally flourish. At some point, every relationship reaches a moment where something feels off. And in that moment, you have 2 choices: react emotionally or respond with awareness. Reaction is immediate. It's driven by uncertainty and fear. Response is different. It's grounded. It allows you to see the pattern clearly. And that difference often determines whether the relationship stabilizes or continues drifting. Daniel faced exactly this moment when Maya's replies became noticeably shorter and plans felt more obligatory. Instead of panicking or doubling down on effort, he chose to pause, reflect, and eventually have an open, non-accusatory conversation about how the dynamic was feeling for both of them. That single moment of awareness became the turning point that allowed them to rebuild with more balance. This isn't about controlling anyone. It's not about predicting behavior. It's not about managing outcomes. It's about staying aligned with yourself. Because the moment you lose that alignment, you begin adjusting too much, overextending, reacting instead of observing. And that's when the dynamic shifts. The reframe is simple but powerful. The healthiest relationships are built on two people who are each grounded in their own lives, values, and boundaries. When that grounding is present, connection becomes a choice rather than a compensation. Respect doesn't come from effort alone. It comes from consistency. Attraction doesn't come from availability. It comes from balance. And connection doesn't grow from one person carrying it. It grows from mutual participation. So if something ever feels like it's shifting, don't rush to fix it. Pause, observe, and ask yourself, am I still grounded in who I am? Or have I started adjusting too much to keep this going? Because the strongest relationships aren't built on effort alone. They're built on clarity. And that clarity starts with self-awareness and the willingness to create healthy structure early on. If this gave you a different way of seeing relationship dynamics, I'd like to hear your perspective. At what point do you think the shift usually begins? Was it something obvious? Or something subtle you only recognized later? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you found value in this, share it with someone who might need this perspective. This channel is here to help you understand relationships, not just react to them. And I'll see you in the next video.